Joker Folie Deux hits a bum note. Andrew Garfield could return as Spidey. Plus, a rumor has it that a DC hero may be jumping ship to the MCU. All that and more coming up on this week's Multiverse News.
Don't change it.
Welcome to Multiverse News, your source for information about all your favorite fictional universes. My name's Matthew Carroll, and with me on the panel today, we have Haley Hobbs. What's happening, Haley?
Well, I was feeling kind of exhausted, but that nice dramatic reading of the intro really gave me the jolt of energy I needed.
Good. I'm glad. I'm feeling more energetic myself. All that. That's the most exercise I've gotten this week. And Jay Sisson, what's happening, buddy?
Yeah, we're starting with the juice. We're coming in hot. Joker 2. What else are we talking about?
You really took it down a notch.
Joker 2 is a huge bummer.
You're like, we got so much energy because Joker 2.
Yeah.
And J. Scotty St. Clair, what's happening, J. Scotty?
Come on! I've been watching a lot of The Penguin, and voice is fun to do.
Hey, we're doing Multiverse News here.
Oh no, it's the extreme again.
Last night on Always Watching, we were practicing Oz's voice. It was nice. All right, well, we always like to read a 5-star review when we've got one, so thank you guys for feeding us 5-star reviews. We have Isaac B. Says, I love this podcast as it covers many nerdy universes I enjoy as a consumer of content. I appreciate all of the hosts, and I love the dynamic that you all have. I do have a recommendation for Jay Sisson of Commute the Podcast.
Let me hear it.
I like the Jay Sisson of Commute the Podcast.
I do have just the name. Like, my name is just Jay Sisson. Like, it's you don't.
I love it.
Like my legal name.
This feeds into the theory that sometimes these 5-star reviewers are just you promoting Commute the Podcast.
It's me and all my shadow accounts.
Yeah, exactly. You have 16 Apple accounts. You had to buy separate iPhones for all of this. He's recommending to you the video game Harry Potter Quidditch Champions. What do you think of that,
I play
Jay?
that whenever somebody can just catch the snitch and then beat me, even though I'm playing like I'm just off the chain, like I'm just like scoring, boom, 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 just killing them, and then they just catch the snitch. Why would I want to play that?
You've got really good Quidditch fundamentals, but they've got one fast dude.
Like, imagine playing Madden against somebody, and then you're beating them like by 6 touchdowns, and they're like, sorry, I found the snitch. You're done. I beat you. Doesn't sound very fun to me.
I feel like, Jay, you already went on Peeves Gabfest to talk about this.
I doubled down and then I tripled down. I went on a Harry Potter podcast and talked for an hour about the rules of Quidditch. I'll quadruple down. Don't give me the opportunity.
I feel like you should go on like a sports podcast next, like 323 with Reed Murphy or whatever, and just like talk about it from a real sports angle.
I am going on his show in a couple weeks. I could just totally derail it and just talk about Quidditch. Yeah,
please do, and don't tell him it's because we talked about it. Just do it, and then we'll all know. Then tell us about it later. Okay, but anyway, Isaac continues. Sorry we chopped up your 5-star review so much. I also would love to hear your thoughts on the Spider-Man 4 news we have been hearing, such as the possibility of Destin Daniel Cretton directing the film. Keep up the great content. Thank you for what you all do for this community of pandas. Aww. Isaac, thanks for being a panda. Thank you for being a panda. Awesome. I think we did talk about that the Spider-Man 4 story a while back, right, when it dropped.
Yeah. His review posted like the day before that episode dropped, so it was right then.
I couldn't remember for sure if we covered it here or MCU Cast or one or the other or both.
You talked about it in front of a microphone at some point.
Yes, at some point I have talked about it, and I am really excited about it because I very much wanted him to do more Marvel things. I think he's one of the great directors they've got right now.
Yeah,
they're stable.
While we won't be talking about Spider-Man 4, we will be talking about the potential future of a Spider-Man, so somewhat appropriate with the timeliness of the review.
You call that a tease.
And it would be his 4th movie, so technically.
Yeah, okay, all right.
Yeah, there we go.
Too many numbers, you guys. Like,
I was told there'd be no math.
yeah, literally. I signed up for no math on this podcast.
Hey, how many Spider-Man movies they got out there? Too many Spider-Man.
The limit does not exist.
I won't do the penguin voice anymore, I promise. That was the last one.
Oh, wait, that was a penguin voice?
If you bait me into it.
Please do all of the 3-2-3 with Reed Murphy about Quidditch with the penguin voice.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Yeah, just
He'll
get
be
really
like, wow,
upset.
I'm never going to invite him on the show again.
Oh, it'd be so good. I can't wait. Like, you should do that and then, like, get permission to play the clip here on Multiverse News and, like, tease it. Be really good. And just have them no reason why you're going off about Quidditch for 20 minutes. Okay. Our first story for the night. Joker Folie, Deux, the long-awaited and much-discussed follow-up to 2019's surprise hit Joker, finally hit theaters last weekend, and the numbers across the board, critically and financially, leave something to be desired. The $200 million budgeted psychological thriller musical courtroom drama sequel debuted to just $37 million domestically, although it has crossed $100 million worldwide now. A soft bow, certainly impacted by poor critical reviews and a D CinemaScore from audiences, a record worst for the comic book film genre. Can Warner Brothers and DC Studios manage to laugh through the tears on this one, or are they dancing with two left feet?
Oh, Joker Folie, Deux. What a story. Yeah. What a story. It's bad. This is bad news for Warner Brothers. There's nothing to laugh about, to be honest, with this, because
you can't make me stop laughing, Jay.
That is half of what it was projected to do domestically. You can laugh at it, but you're not gonna laugh if you're Warner Brothers. And it's not going to be saved. A D CinemaScore is many nails in the coffin of a movie that's already had a disastrous start. And so I think the conversation here is what happened around Joker Folie, Deux, a movie that I know on this show we were all very hopeful for. I remember the night that trailer came out, we watched it and we reacted to it, and all of us were pumped about it. I mean, we thought that the trailer really showed off what this movie could be, and Lady Gaga looked awesome in it, Joaquin Phoenix looked awesome in it. Like, we just really kind of saw the vision through the trailer. And so we were banging the drum for this movie. And when it premiered at Venice, that's where it really started to go downhill. You started to get the early reviews of how people really did not like it. And on this show, we came out and said, people didn't really like the first Joker either. Critic-wise, it had a low critic score at the beginning, and then over time, people started going out and seeing it, and it really built up to something. But this one's different, all right? This one is completely different in terms of the story that was told here and the people that came out to see it, which was not many people at all. $37, by the way, is lower than Morbius. It's also lower than the Marvels,
million,
which we all like the Marvels.
Jay,
the Marvels,
say
what?
$37 million, not $37. You said $37.
Did I really? Well, okay. $37 million.
You weren't wrong. It is less. Yeah, it's still less.
37 is less than Morbius. Did I really say 37? Okay.
You said $37.
All right, I got to lock in. Okay. All right, so today I'm going to go through with you all and tell you the high points of an expose that was written in the Hollywood Reporter today on what went wrong with Joker Folie, Deux. So I've gone through this, I've read through it, and I've picked out what I think are new pieces of information and interesting pieces of information, and some of them, to be honest, I'm not trying to dance on its grave, but some of them are just funny pieces of information, really, when you just zoom out on the whole thing. So let's go through some stuff. So the idea for this movie came to Joaquin Phoenix in a dream. All right, is the way that this film came together. This is the beginning of this came, the musical element, the basic plot, and all of that was a dream that Joaquin Phoenix had. And they actually contemplated putting this on Broadway first before they decided to put it into the theaters, but ultimately decided to do theaters instead. All right, so they got together, Todd Phillips and Warner Brothers. They had to figure out how this was going to work with DC. And this is one of the main things that I think we should talk about, is that, like, DC was shut out of this movie. All right. The way that the expose wrote it is that they gave Todd Phillips free reign. They said, you can do your thing. You can max out the budget. He ballooned the budget of this film up to $200 million, $50 million of which went to him, Joaquin Phoenix, and Lady Gaga only. All right. Wow. So a quarter of the budget went to just those three. All right. So they ballooned the budget. DC Studios came in. He said, no thanks. James Gunn gave him notes. He did not consult the notes. The DC logo didn't even pop up in this thing. Like they wanted no association with DC Studios at all. They wanted to completely sever ties. And that's new information. Like I've kind of wondered, because James Gunn usually, he's been hyping up other DC projects that aren't DC Studios. Like if you remember last summer, he stumped really hard for The Flash, and he's been talking up The Penguin and like some of these other DC things. He hasn't really said anything about Joker Folie à Deux, which I thought was weird, but now it really makes sense, is that he was not welcomed into the room with this movie. And so the crew, the cast, and Phillips, most importantly, were not getting any feedback on this movie. They did 0 test screenings, which is insane. That's insane. To do 0 test screenings with anyone on a $200 million movie that's a sequel, that's a comic book, it's a genre film, that's crazy. It could have used some test screenings, like, obviously. And Lady Gaga's another interesting thing here, too. She apparently signed on to this script before it was finished and really did not know the types of... Like, she shot a bunch of stuff, and she's starting to talk about it a little bit, and I think she'll talk more about it. She shot a lot of stuff for this movie that never made it into the movie. And it seems like maybe, I'm just kind of speculating here, but it seems like maybe she took this with the idea of thinking, like, let me go get that Oscar that I didn't get for A Star is Born. That's what that movie's called, right? A Star is Born. And so I think when you see the final product and you see maybe her comments on how much was shot, there's a disconnect there. She's definitely not kind of the centerpiece of the movie in a way that maybe I think she maybe thought she would be. So again, there's kind of a conversation there around Lady Gaga. So like we said, $200 million budget, $50 million went out. $450 million globally is what it needs to clear to break even, and it's probably not going to do that. I mean, with starting on the weekend that it had, I don't see it doing that. And then finally, and I'll let you guys get in here, like the D CinemaScore is something just to kind of to talk about. I don't know if we've gone into detail about how CinemaScore is calculated in here before, but a CinemaScore is not just a bunch of critics. What the CinemaScore has data behind it. They go out, they talk to people who've seen the movie, fans, casuals, everybody. They come out, they interview them. They say, hey, why were you here? Did you like it? Would you see it again? Would you recommend it? What didn't you like about it? They gather all this data. So that D is really alarming if you're Warner Brothers, because first of all, like you said, a comic book movie has never gotten a D. These are genre films. They're supposed to keep people coming out to the theater. So what that tells us is that people hated this movie. Like, they came out of this movie and they hated it. Lady Gaga fans hated it. Fans of the first one hated it. People didn't show up for this movie. If they liked the first one, they didn't go to this one. And it's a disaster all the way across the board. And it will fall off hard next weekend, is what that D CinemaScore tells us. But yeah, overall, this is a fascinating movie. It's going to be studied for a long time, I think, like to see like I think this is going to cause changes. I think the ripple effects here are going to be significant. I think the budgets are going to be reined in a little bit more on these genre films. I think the creative control aspect of just saying, Todd Phillips, go do what you want, that's going to be reevaluated. What are we doing when it comes to fans and fans of a thing and creative control and moving away from the source material and all of that? Like, these are conversations that these studios are going to have at this point after a movie like this, which this is the last in a long line of them, but this is a pretty bad one.
I did see the movie this weekend, and if you'd like to hear my spoilery thoughts, Ashley Coffin and I covered 2019 Joker and Folie à Deux over on Bingers Assemble, so I encourage you to go check that out. But to give my take on the film, dancing around spoilers, fascinating is a good word, Jay, because I agree. I think it's inherently fascinating, and considering the future of everyone involved, like, we haven't really talked about it on the show, but Joaquin Phoenix has kind of been in a little bit of hot water recently for abandoning a gay romance film that was like weeks away from shooting, and he just said he wasn't interested anymore. So a lot of people left without work, a lot of money left on the table. Not a good look, but Todd Phillips especially, like, thinking about that 2019 Joker, we talked about it on the show. I don't think anybody expected, even Todd Phillips didn't expect that movie to gross $1 billion. It did come out at that time where it was just like comic book movie after comic book movie after comic book movie was bringing in, $1 billion, and it came off the heels of Endgame, and it was such an antithesis to Endgame. It was so edgy and had something completely different to say, and it was an anti-blockbuster, and I feel like Todd Phillips took the anti-blockbuster and doubled down on it, and like he was just
anti-blockbuster,
something like without becoming Ouroboros, without eating its own tail. But he was just clearly inherently uninterested in, like you said, the fact that he wasn't collaborating with DC Studios in any way, shape, or form. I think is kind of obvious to me, and I also think he took this opportunity to stick his middle finger up to the studio and to the fans, and he did it for $200 million. So it's that's quite a price tag to pay. So I think the days of Todd Phillips getting carte blanche are well behind us. But beyond that, I don't know how much more there is to say. Like, I went into it seeing the hyperbolic reactions, thinking surely it can't be that bad. Surely there will be something to appreciate. And I did have, that's one thing I will say about the film. I think in keeping with the first film, the technical aspects, the filmmaking, the performances, the cinematography, that's all there. It's just the story they chose to tell feels so disjointed. And it's not disjointed in the sense that we talk a lot about a lot of times on this show, where it feels like too many cooks in the kitchen. This feels like there maybe should have been more cooks in the kitchen, like somebody to offer some guidance or a second opinion here, because it's a singular vision. It's just an incoherent singular vision that's I don't know what the expectation or what kind of result that they thought they were going to get here. So, and just super fascinating, a little disappointing, but not entirely unexpected. So, I, for one, Jay, you talk about the future, what comic book films are going to look like and reining in those budgets. I've been saying that for a long time now. You can make a good movie and it doesn't have to break the bank. Just be smart about it. So if there is anything good to come about this, that's my hope. I'll try to stay optimistic.
I haven't seen it yet, so I can't comment on the actual movie, but a lot of the conversation happening in the chat right now, Suresh kind of brought it up in the chat, saying it's kind of a bummer that it didn't do well, because this would be, if it had done well, it would have been a good example of praising directors for individual visions or whatnot. I'm paraphrasing his feedback there, but I think that's one of the things I find most interesting about the story is, like, we always think that there's a narrative that is very popular that is like a lot of movies fail because of studio interference, and that's not wrong. That is true, but like, studios are sometimes a great guiding hand that give good notes. It just really depends on the studio and the suits that are there and how you can give soft guidance without forcing Sam Raimi to fit a bunch of characters he doesn't want in his movie, or whatever. And there's other the other a big example of another movie that people have, a series of movies that people have problems with, are the prequels in Star Wars. Some people love them, but a lot of people have problems with them, and a lot of the problems stem from George Lucas just having carte blanche to do whatever he wants because he's George Lucas. And there's all these examples of movies like that, where when you just have complete creative control and no oversight, or just someone you trust saying, maybe consider this. I was listening to a interview with Kevin Smith this week, and I loved Clerks growing up. When I was a teenager, Clerks was one of my favorite movies. I found I'd never heard this story. At least I'd never heard him tell it anyway. I think I may have heard it online somewhere. But apparently that movie was originally, his original ending was to have Dante, the main character, get shot at the end. And then the studio was like, that's terrible. That's a terrible way to end this movie. It's such a fun, lighthearted, you enjoy these characters, and then you just shoot him. He's like, don't you get it? It's a joke, because he wasn't supposed to be there, and he's dead. And the studio head was like, yeah, but it's not a funny joke, and it ruins the whole vibe of the movie. And he was so dedicated to that ending, but he relented, and that's, I would have hated that as an ending, like, would have made that movie feel like heavy instead of like this fun romp. It's just, I just find that a very interesting concept. The idea that it's not a either or thing. It's a balance between the proper amount of guidance and input. Obviously, there are examples of great directors who have done their singular visions and done a great job with that. but I think most of the time a singular vision needs a little bit of guidance. And like you were saying, Jay, just some test screenings to let them know, like, people hate this.
You could have got that D CinemaScore energy out there early. Yep. They did it with Captain America: Brave New World. They did test screenings like months ago, and they walked away being like, "Wow, everybody hates this movie." And so they went back and did weeks and weeks of reshoots. I mean, that's what a test screening is for, is to sort of take the temperature, and then you can make adjustments if you want to make adjustments. And there's such a thing as an echo chamber getting too tight and everybody buying their own hype a little bit, and then the final product making it to screen and it doesn't make sense to anyone else. And I don't remember if this was Lady Gaga or Joaquin Phoenix. I think it was Lady Gaga. But she talked about how sometimes her and Joaquin Phoenix and Todd Phillips would go into the trailer, like they had the whole script and the whole thing was done for Joker, and then they'd rip it all up, like literally rip it up ceremoniously and start over. And she talked about it. Was it Lady Gaga that said? Oh, did you hear that quote?
I think we talked about it on the show. I think it was her, but I was just saying, based on what I saw on screen, I totally believe that process took place. Yeah.
I remember when I heard that was way before the movie came out, and I thought, kind of just for a second, like, that doesn't sound like a very good process. Like, that kind of sounds like a terrible process. But I was like, but the trailer looks great. It'll probably be fine. But then now it totally makes sense that, like, they were just, there's this feedback loop of this is so great, like over and over. No test screenings, no notes from anyone else, no DC involvement, no Warner Brothers involvement. Here's all the money you need. Go out and do your thing. And what we got at the end was a film that felt like you ripped it up 100 times. And you know, the quote came out as like, this was so empowering. It was so artful. And I think it just made it a mess, like having that sort of vision and patching together a lot of these like half-baked ideas and sort of smashing them all together, cutting it. I mean, I feel bad for Lady Gaga, to be honest, like, because I think this week you'll see her start to say things like, I'm kind of sad that we didn't get to see everything we shot and everything we did. Like I think you'll start to see that. And I'm not saying that we need another Snyder cut, like we don't need the Gaga cut or whatever controversy, but like that's what I'm foreseeing here, is like that kind of idea, is that like Lady Gaga, she wrote a whole album and released a whole album about this, like it's titled like Harlequin or something, like it's like supposed to marry to this, and so this does no favors to her career now on film and in the studio, music, and it's just, I feel like she's sort of a victim in a way, you know what I mean? Like with this whole thing, like she signed up for something and didn't really know what she was getting herself into. So, I mean, more will come out. You know, it's all that. I mean, she still made out with a lot of millions of dollars. You know, but whatever. But still, it's just, man, it's a mess for everybody's career. And Scotty, you said the thing about Joaquin Phoenix. Like that's not the first time he's done that either. Bailing on a movie a few weeks before. I mean, he has a history of that. This is the movie he could not bail on. You know, like he was. Yeah. He's the Joker, like he has to be the guy, and we see sometimes maybe he's more of a problem on set that people just don't want to put up with, and I mean it's a mess all the way across the board.
Yeah, not to get too sidetracked here, but with the mention of like finding that happy medium with studio involvement, did anybody happen to watch? We talked about the trailer when it launched, but that show on Max, the franchise, the first episode dropped this week.
Did, yeah.
Okay, yeah.
I haven't watched it yet. I saw it streaming, but I haven't watched it yet.
Matt, I think you said it when we talked about it in the lightning round, but you thought your takeaway that it didn't feel like it had anything kind of like additive to say about franchises, and I agree. Once I saw the episode, I thought it was kind of antagonistic towards them. Yeah.
But it didn't look like it was a loving send up. It looked like it was tearing them down, and I completely think that after seeing the first episode.
Yeah. I agree, but just like. Yeah, I thought about it in the context of like, what is that happy medium? Because like in that show, I do think, you know, people that like this show and like franchises should maybe check it out, because like I thought the best part of the show was the Kevin Feige stand-in. He's like Kevin Feige, but he felt more like Alex Jones, and Kevin Feige.
Well, he wasn't Kevin Feige.
No,
he was a different guy. I'm pretty sure, because when he says he mentions some other guy's name who is the head, and he's the guy that everyone loves, and this guy's more like he was the studio head that he says, I don't like my name being known. I get things done, like and he mentions some other guy that is the head of what do they call it? Maximum Studios. Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds right. Okay.
There's nothing positive. There's no like, I thought now we're talking about a totally different thing. And I'm sorry, but the franchise
that wasn't my intention.
The franchise as a show, there's the character that gets you into the show, and I thought for sure she was going to be a fan, and that was what she was going to see all the chaos and then go like be disappointed because she really loves these things and see like oh, but there is a love for it here or something like that. I thought that was going to be sort of the thing toward the end of this episode, but nope, it's just a cynical look at people trying to make like whatever blockbuster mill movies without any heart. It was a bummer. Let's move on because we have spent half the show on Joker Folie Deux, and Haley marked in our script a little behind the scenes. We often say we'll mark like if we don't really have anything to say about something, like so don't wait on me to say anything because I'm not gonna. And Haley marked, I'm not going to talk about this. And then we talked without her for 30 minutes.
Haley's been on the bench for 30 minutes.
Yeah.
I actually
She's
took
like,
a
put
nap.
me in the game, coach.
Yeah.
I'm revived.
all those shots of her, when I cut to the 4 shot, it's going to be just her sleeping. All right. Up next, while promoting his new film, We Live in Time, via an interview with Esquire, Andrew Garfield spoke on his willingness to reprise his role as the Amazing Spider-Man, saying, quote, "For sure, I would 100% come back if it was the right thing and it's additive to the culture. If there's a great concept or something that hasn't been done before that's unique and odd and exciting and that you can sink your teeth into. I love the character and it brings joy. If part of what I bring is joy, then I'm joyful in return." We all have an opinion on how Sony has handled its toy box of characters. Is the prospect of more Peter 3 something we'd thwip out our wallets for?
A lot of thoughts bounce around my head when I read this quote. You could argue that Andrew Garfield got a redemption in No Way Home. He was like a fan favorite when he was revealed on screen. You see those videos of people watching the movie and they just went crazy when he pulls his mask off. And then he gets his sweet moment of, I guess, forgiveness of himself when he saves Peter 1's MJ. And so you could say that that was kind of a French kiss, like farewell to that character. He was also a fun Spider-Man. Like, he didn't fit the mold of what Spider-Man is technically, but he's the best thing about those movies, in my opinion. It's not his fault they built kind of a not great universe around him. And so I would not dislike seeing Andrew Garfield back as Spider-Man. I think it could be a fun opportunity for Sony to try to create their own live-action Spider-Man universe without it being connected to the MCU, because they are just failing at that miserably right now, as we have discussed ad nauseum on the podcast, and I'm sure Jay will whip out his extreme voice for anytime soon. But I think it could be fun to see, like, an older Spider-Man, like an older Peter Parker. Maybe in this universe, he gets with MJ and he has his family like he does in the comics. Like, there's a lot of really interesting ways you could take it with Andrew Garfield, who clearly has a lot of love still for the character. And I think Tobey's arc is good and done, but I think Andrew just has, I think there's something left there that he didn't really, there's no closure maybe for him as an actor on the role. I kind of got that from reading the article, and so I would be here for it, but can they do it well? Can they do it thoughtfully? That's where the questions really come into play.
I'm right there with you. The realist in me, I see this for what it is. This is Andrew Garfield playing the game, doing what he does, and he's a great actor. He doesn't need Spider-Man. Spider-Man could benefit from Andrew Garfield, but Andrew Garfield, he doesn't need Spider-Man. And, thinking about his Amazing Spider-Man duology there, trilogy, if we want to include No Way Home there, I think about the 2012 one. It was a great start. It was, we weren't getting Tobey back. Spider-Man 4 wasn't going to happen. So I was into it. The Lizard is he's actually, once upon a time, he was my favorite Spider-Man villain, like growing up on that animated series. So ecstatic to see that character, and I was excited for the future, but 2014's Amazing Spider-Man was not good. Very clunky, very messy, and brought everything to a screeching halt. So I agree with you there, Haley, that it does feel like out of all the people that have played Spider-Man, even Tom Holland included, he is the one that hasn't really got his due, even with that fantastic moment in No Way Home that could serve as that, kind of putting a nice little bow on it. So it's been interesting. The whole time we've been talking about Andrew Garfield making that return and the excellent campaign he did while he was denying the fact that he would appear in No Way Home. But I look at this and like, I never really thought it was going to happen even after No Way Home. I was just like, I don't trust Sony, first and foremost. I do not trust them, even if it is Andrew Garfield. I just don't trust them if, unfortunately, Marvel Studios is not involved in some capacity. So I actually take him saying this as kind of like confirmation that it won't happen, because we just got the news about Dustin Daniel Cretton getting attached to another Tom Holland Spider-Man. And from what we heard, that is going to be a multiverse story. And while, you know, I think all of us here bristled a little bit against multiverse versus a street level Spider-Man story. But if we're going to get another multiverse story, let's just not do the same thing over again. Let's not have Toby and Andrew come back. Let's see other Spider-Man potentially, or, you know, just other aspects of the multiverse. We don't really need to do Spider-Verse over again, especially when we've got so much that's going so well on the animated side of things. So yeah, that's kind of where I come at it from. Sorry, I can't talk. Come at it from. I'd be open to his return, but I just really don't think it's going to happen. But love Andrew Garfield. Love the fact that he's, you know, willing to keep fans endeared to him, and yeah, just keep doing what you're doing. We love you.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I think that I mirror both your sentiments. Love Andrew Garfield. Would love to see more of this character. The thing that really stands out though is like, but I don't trust Sony. The thing that really stands out to me though is like when I watched No Way Home, we had 2 returning Spider-Men, and Tobey Maguire is beloved, and I love him, but like I didn't leave that theater thinking I want more Tobey Maguire. Even though I love him, there just seemed like there was a lot left on the table for Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man. The like pain he'd gone through and the way that he had turned dark. Like I want to see that. Like I want to see him still wrestling with his demons of being a darker Spider-Man, and like that seemed really, really interesting and something we really haven't seen on screen. Last time we saw Spider-Man turn dark, he just danced around, which just, you know, wasn't the same thing. Yeah, so I just think I didn't feel like Toby had a lot more story to tell, but I did feel that with Andrew Garfield. So I would love this, but I do think they'd have to somehow figure out the thing we were talking about earlier, the balance between creativity and like the singular vision versus studio involvement. I think Sony is off the charts out of whack when it comes to that. They're just not doing a good job with that. It's just not working. They keep building these things that are built to create a universe, but no one's making good movies. And it just feels like it's putting the cart before the horse and not putting it in the hands of creatives that know what they're doing or have a good vision. So I think they're just not doing a good job over there. And so they would need change from the top or Marvel Studios involvement for me to really be on board. I mean, no, yeah. I would still go see it. I'd still be excited for Andrew Garfield. But like, yeah, I for it to be good, I feel like that's probably what they're going to have to figure out.
Yeah, I just hope that if Andrew Garfield is ever approached about playing Spider-Man again by Sony, I hope that he has very good discernment, and I hope that he has a very good agent, and I hope that whatever idea that he's presented with, he is true to his words here, and he takes a role as this character in a way that tells a new story, a fresh story. He loves the character, and that's not the thing, but he also does not want to just play this character 5 more times, right? Like there's not, and his words sort of say that. It's like he doesn't want to just sign up for 4 more movies about being Spider-Man and fighting 4 more villains and kind of continue this whole thing. But I think what he's saying is, look at what No Way Home was. It was a unique opportunity with the character. It's kind of like what Hugh Jackman just did with Wolverine. They didn't come out and say, come be Wolverine for 5 more movies or whatever. They said, we have this unique opportunity. You get to come out, you get to do your thing for a movie, and then you can sort of step away if you want to step away. You know, like you leave the door open, but you don't have to. It's like I can see that sort of vision here for Andrew Garfield if he wants to come back and be Spider-Man. I don't think the move here is to just be Spider-Man for the future indefinitely and just pop up in everything and be like, oh, it's you again from the multiverse. And I don't think he wants that either. But I think if he's presented with some kind of a window where he can do something that's new and fresh with the character, like what No Way Home was, I think he probably would be open to that. But again, like I said, with discernment, What I don't want to see, and what I think would be the danger zone here, is if Sony has intent of getting all of these Spider-Men together plus others to fight their Venom multiverse villain or whatever. Like, to me, that feels like a miss in terms of what you could really do. And I don't know if people are going to be too excited about that. I mean, we've kind of seen a very lackluster return on the Sonyverse, not just financially, but critically as well. And I don't know if people are necessarily, and if I'm Andrew Garfield's agent, I'm saying, like, stay away from that. Like, I don't want you popping up and fighting Kraven or Morbius or whatever. Like, that would be bad for your career. So I think it's there's a sweet spot there, you know, like there's a spot where he wants to play him, but it's only under a specific set of circumstances. And if he can stick to that, I'm in. But again, he's Andrew Garfield. He does not need the money. He does not need to just keep playing Spider-Man forever. So there's a line here to walk. But I am glad. I'm always glad to hear from him. I think he's just like a very charismatic, smart, just like down to earth, personable person. And so when he talks about Spider-Man, it is refreshing to hear somebody just be like, I loved playing Spider-Man. I know he's a comic book character. I get it, but I loved playing that character. That's refreshing to hear in a world where sometimes people are trying to distance themselves from those characters as much as they can as they get more sort of a profile in Hollywood. And we love Andrew Garfield. He's a great actor, but he's a great person, a great person, especially in these interviews that we see him in.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think some of our MCU players could take notes from him about how he handles himself in interviews. Because,
Totally.
I mean, yeah. Look, his duology fell on its face, and he still conducts himself with like that level of grace that you're talking about there.
Yeah.
Could think of a couple of our favorites that didn't do that.
Yeah, of any of the Spider-Mans, he could be the one to be like really wanting to distance himself, and he hasn't.
Yeah,
and
for
that's
sure.
really rad. All right, up next, last week, The Hollywood Reporter released an editorial analysis of the state of the Star Wars franchise after being bought by Disney 12 years ago. The report crunched and discussed numbers including budgets, revenues, critical and audience reviews, viewership, and streaming subscriptions, among other verticals for all the projects beginning with The Force Awakens through The Acolyte. While the author and article don't take a definitive stance, amongst poor receptions and fan backlash surrounding multiple projects, they raise the question, has Disney dropped the ball with Star Wars so far? And if so, is there still hope for the future? So, what's our take on the state of Star Wars?
Well, to quote Princess Leia, we always have hope. Mm-hmm. So yeah, there's still hope there. But I read this article, and looking at the headline, I went in kind of with some trepidation. I was like, oh, great, somebody else talking about the state of Star Wars since the Disney regime came in. Can't wait to unpackage this. But to the author's credit, I really got the sense that they are a Star Wars fan. Like, they didn't miss a single opportunity to make allusions to quotes in the context of, like, they talk about Rey seeing the Millennium Falcon for the first time and calling it a piece of garbage, and then the fact that, like, oh, we have to take the piece of garbage. So, I don't agree with that take. I wouldn't call any of the Star Wars movies that have come out garbage. Every single Star Wars project that's come out, even if I have issues with it, there's some level of enjoyment that I get out of it. That is the kind of Star Wars fan I am. And I think I made that decision somewhere around 2015 when The Force Awakens came out. I liked it. I didn't love it. It was great to be back in the world of Star Wars, but it was a little bit too much of a rehash of A New Hope for me. Considering that, and considering this author, like, while he did not miss any opportunities to make some digs here and there, the overall narrative was optimistic and was hopeful, which I found encouraging. That's the way I approach these things. And just thinking about the discourse around Star Wars and how certain swaths of the fandom have gotten so polarized and so toxic, and it feels like that's all you really hear about. I did kind of want to address the fact that I think there is a section of the fandom that has become a little bit marginalized, where they are Star Wars fans, but they have some issues with the way Disney's handled it. Like, we know that trilogy of films that began with The Force Awakens and ended with The Rise of Skywalker, no plan going into that whatsoever. So I think it's worth discussing and giving some credence to those people that, like, they're not entirely happy with the state of Star Wars, but they're not out there vilifying every person of color or every female character that gets cast, or, making Kathleen Kennedy the villain. So yeah, I think about it. I think what Disney needs to understand about Star Wars, and I think they've started to learn it a little bit, is that it's not Marvel. You can't have the same kind of output that you have with Marvel for Star Wars. That's what makes Star Wars special. It's that time between. Absence makes the heart grow fonder. And like thinking about the fact that the last Star Wars film we got was 2019, which was The Rise of Skywalker. People have their opinions about that. But again, like I said at the beginning, I get some level of enjoyment out of every single Star Wars. So just being in the theater, getting the yellow scroll, the John Williams music, I had a good time. So think about the fact that we're 5 years removed from that. That feels right. Like I am ready to see another Star Wars in the theater. Yeah, we've had stuff on Disney Plus that has, satiated the appetite in the meantime. But yeah, I think, I'm optimistic for the future. And I do think that Disney needs to learn that Star Wars is not Marvel. But at the same time, I can't help but think about like Marvel and how we've talked about that, how like Bob Iger keeps saying the input is going to be less and less and less. And like, this was really the first year that I felt that, like having Deadpool and Wolverine be the only theatrical release. But outside of that, we've had plenty of content. I do think Marvel could benefit from that a little bit, and people probably hate me for saying that, but again, absence makes the heart grow fonder. Yeah, you get the opportunity to miss these characters and look forward to seeing them again, and it's just not so oversaturated.
Yeah, I think what you're saying is Star Wars can't be Marvel. Marvel can't be Marvel either necessarily. They all these series, Marvel, Star Wars, Star Trek, and I'm sure there's others I'm leaving off, but have tried to do this, like, let's make a show that comes out 30 times a year. We need TV episodes always dropping and movies always dropping. And there's just, you lose the chance to miss your favorite characters. You lose the chance to miss that world. And I think there's just something about that the franchises have to, I don't think it's impossible to make stuff at the current clip that Marvel's making it, but it is something about quality control and planning and direction and feeling like it's moving in some way. And Star Wars is on a whole nother level. They're putting stuff out that's coming in so many different time places in the timeline and stuff that like they're except for this kind of like Mando-verse sort of merging together, seems like it's going towards something. But yeah, I don't know. All these things are being calibrated in real time because they're for the first time like, let's make fandom a factory and put it out all the time. And it's just, they overdid it. They're trying to correct. They're trying to find the right balance, and hopefully that balance will be not too sparse. I don't like it when it's too sparse.
Can he bring balance to the Force?
I don't know, man.
Yeah, I think, it's been wildly inconsistent for Star Wars. Some of their products since The Rise of Skywalker have been critically acclaimed. You think Andor, for example, The Mandalorian obviously took on a new life to Star Wars, and Grogu and all of that stuff has been big. But they've also had their struggles. They've had production. Solo, for example, had production struggles that really caused that movie to struggle in the theaters. Other Disney Plus shows have had very low ratings in terms of viewership, like The Book of Boba Fett was not viewed very much. Same with like The Acolyte had its problems in terms of viewership. And so you put all that together, and it's an up and down. It's a roller coaster, right? Is that you have some products that are hitting, and then you have others that are not for different reasons. And you touched on the toxic fandom, and I think sometimes we do kind of over blame toxic fandom, because I think at the end of the day, toxic fandom is a very small minority. It seems like it's not. Yeah. Like it seems like it's a majority of people, because these are the YouTube channels and the Twitter hashtags and the piling on the graves and the comments on the Instagram posts and all that stuff, and it can seem overwhelming. But I think when things are good, and we've seen examples of this time and time again, when things are good and people like them for the most part, that gets to dominate the conversation, right? Like that really does. Like I think Barbie is a perfect example of that. Barbie there was an attempt to criticize Barbie from a toxic fandom standpoint because of some of its messaging, but it was so drowned out by the mass acceptance of that movie that you didn't even hear it. Right. And so it's like the voice to me is still the same. It's just that when something's being received positively by a lot of people, it's just that's what drives us. The problem is whenever not a lot of people watch it, the toxicity gets to drive the conversation. And so The Acolyte is a good example of that, right? Whenever the viewership numbers are low, what we talk about and what we have to all of a sudden, that's what we have to talk about, right, as being the thing. And it's just So it's Star Wars is in a unique place. I think they get it probably more than any other fandom on some level for some reason. You think Marvel and DC, I don't think they have quite. I mean, we've seen shades of it a little bit, like the Marvels comes to mind, but like Star Wars is just on a different level of that sort of thing. But again, I really don't think it's a majority of people. I think it is a small minority. It's just Star Wars deals with it in a different way. But overall here, I think one thing I wanted to touch on is that Star Wars itself is still a very valuable franchise. Like this article mentioned that sales for Star Wars merchandise and Star Wars material like that is through the roof. It's still cranking out a ton of money. People love the product. When you go to Galaxy's Edge, like that is a huge money generator at Disney. Like, so there are people still have an appetite for it. They still love it, and there's still people willing to spend a lot of money on it. And so I think that's positive. If you want to look at it in a positive way, is you could say, hey, the future can be bright because people still love it. It's just, what are you going to do with it from here on out? And are people going to accept this as like good content? Because at the end of the day, like people are going to give some grace to Star Wars because it's Star Wars. But there's only so much of that you can give. So at some point, if we can get that back on the right track, I think the future can be bright. So to answer the question the article posed, is Disney bad at Star Wars? I think the answer is no, but I think they could be better ultimately.
Sure.
So the quote I'll use is from The Rise of Skywalker, and it's Billy D. Williams as Lando saying, "There are more of us." And that's always what I think of when I hear about Star Wars' toxic fandom. There are actually more of us who don't feel that way, but you don't hear about that, like you were saying, Jay. Star Wars, I think probably more than any other franchise that has ever existed, relies so much on nostalgia. And when Star Wars does nostalgia well, the fans love it. That was something that The Mandalorian did extremely well in its first season. It reminded people of those first original movies. It reminded them of this grounded storytelling that originally existed. The look, the feel of the world, everything about it harkened back to A New Hope. And when The Mandalorian started to go away from that in like season 3 recently, people didn't like it as much. Then you go, well, but hey, Haley, Andor had nothing to do with nostalgia, and it went through the roof. People ate it up, they loved it. But I think that with Andor, it was so different and so well done that people were here for it, kind of like with Rogue One. It was very singular, very standalone, but it was so well done that people couldn't, you can't find that many bad things, if anything, to say about Rogue One. And so I always think about that with Star Wars, like, and I'm not somebody who has a ton of nostalgia with Star Wars. Like, I didn't exist in 1977, first of all, so I didn't see it when it came out. I didn't really become a big fan until a few years ago, but I know that that's like a cornerstone of the Star Wars fandom, and I think when they lean into it and do it well, it works and people love it. And when they try new stuff, I love it. I'm here for it. I want to see new things in Star Wars because that's how you move the storytelling forward in a world where the storytelling relies so much on filling in gaps. And that's something that's really hard to wrangle, I think, in general. So, you know, going forward, we have Dave Filoni as the chief creative officer. I think we're going to see that shift that we're talking about. He is George's acolyte. He understands Star Wars so well, and he understands the way to tell those stories really well. And I'm really excited to see what else he's going to bring us. I wouldn't vilify anybody at Lucasfilm because, I mean, what an impossible task to be given, to be handed the keys to like the most recognizable franchise to ever exist, and hope and pray that you're doing something that people will like. And so, yeah, it's not Disney doing it badly. It's just that sometimes you're never going to meet expectations because some people can never be satisfied, and that's you can't let that like hold you back when you're doing stuff like this. So I'm hopeful for their future, and I've enjoyed everything, and I can't wait for more.
The only note I wanted to throw on that was toxicity in fandom is such a broad topic, and there are different kinds of toxicity. And there is obviously misogyny, racism that I think has no place in the discussion. Like, and a lot of times I don't even think those people are fans. A lot of them are, agitators who see an opportunity to use the big budget movie that's out to like try to rile people up toward the misogyny and racism they're already trying to spill all over the internet. But there's another kind of toxicity, which is just like, this isn't like what I grew up with. You know, like this isn't enough like my thing. And then there's the other, even further out.
I don't think that take is inherently toxic. It's about how you express that, right?
Definitely not.
Right. Yeah. Like, it's just like that nothing, it's sort of the nostalgia, the dark side of nostalgia, which is like, I love the thing that I grew up with so much that nothing will ever live up to it, but I keep expecting it to, and then I shit on it when it doesn't. Like, you're having an internal problem with your, like, meter of what a movie can do. And every once in a while, it'll meet that. And I do think the idea with, like, Rogue One and Andor, they did a thing where it's just so different that it was nostalgic because it had some of the iconography, but it's so different. You can just have a new experience as an adult and enjoy a Star Wars thing. I think that's one of the reasons that the fandom is so likes that movie and that series so much, because if you're an adult watching Star Wars now for the first time, somebody on TikTok was doing a breakdown where they were like, the fandom now, if they were talking about the original series or the original trilogy, and they kept like, the guy would come on, can you believe that this is happening and this, like all these little like things they would be picking on now, but we just didn't have that then, and it's been there for 50 years in our consciousness, so we just love it because it's there, Anyway, so I think there's just different kinds of toxicity. So it's just like stratification of like almost like well-meaning dislike of a thing versus like actual like outside agitators trying to cause that toxicity in the fandom, and it's hard to draw the lines. And depending on how you feel about a thing, you can feel like someone else is being toxic, even if they just genuinely don't like a thing for whatever reason. It's tough.
Sure. And I think it's worth mentioning, to bring it full circle, I do think there is such thing as toxic positivity as well, where it's like, hey, somebody is trying to bring up a legitimate issue that they had with something and it just gets shut down. Oh, you don't like this. This means you're blank. This means you're blank. You hate America.
100%.
Make sure you're registered to vote, people.
Yeah, please do. Pandas vote, everybody.
I think a lot of people too, like, they kind of feel like us, like the majority. I think the majority of people are like us. They just like good content, and they'll watch good content. And if they get bored with something, they'll stop watching it. It's like that's how most people are. Most people like that don't really take to the internet. So like when I see a Star Wars movie that I really like, I don't go comment on their Instagram or something. Like I just I'm like, I really like this movie, and I'll talk about it with people. If I see a Star Wars movie I don't really like I really did not like The Rise of Skywalker, but I left the theater and I didn't really talk about that with anyone other than just people in my life. I didn't go on Instagram, I didn't go on YouTube, I didn't go comment that. And it's like, when you get on the internet, sometimes you see those extremes. You see the people who have a super like take that they gotta get out, like they gotta fire it off into the like a flare, and it's just, so you go to the comment sections and it's just like, wow, this is what people think of this stuff. But you got to consider that most people just aren't like that, and it's not even just fandom. I mean, it's politics, it's Facebook, it's the comment section, it's that's our culture now. It's just how, like, who's in the comments? Well, it's people with something to say, and most people don't have a whole lot to say with this stuff. Like, it's just like, we just kind of liked it or we didn't, and that's it. So again, when we say that the toxicity sometimes can get blown out of proportion, that's kind of what I mean, is like, you can kind of, sometimes we'll be like, well, this movie failed because of toxicity, and it's just, most of the time that's not totally true. They fail because just not a lot of people, it wasn't appealing to the right people, it wasn't marketed the right way, maybe had production problems, whatever. Maybe the content just didn't really match up with people's expectations, whatever. Like, that's why movies don't do well. But to put the toxicity is not that it's not that powerful. It doesn't have the power to really destroy these franchises. But production woes and overpriced budgets and low scores and just kind of receptions, those do. And those are some of the things that Star Wars has realistically struggled with since it was acquired by Disney.
One thing, you brought up the Barbie example earlier as something that like doesn't have the same sort of toxicity, and that's why one of the reasons I wanted to bring up the different kinds of toxicity we have, because one of the reasons I think that's successful is because it didn't have a fandom. Like, there weren't a lot of people sitting around going like, this isn't my Barbie movie. You know what I mean? Like, there wasn't a Barbie movie from 40 years ago that we compare it to and like had this like love of it since we were children. It was like, that was a really good movie. And full stop. You don't have to start comparing it to everything else. And I think that sometimes when a franchise is kind of new to the scene, it has that opportunity to define itself and not have to be weighed against something else.
True.
All right, well, that's all our feature stories. We're going to be right back with the lightning round and our Spotify poll after this word from our sponsors. Welcome back to Multiverse News. Hey, everybody. I forgot to mention it like I normally do before we went off, but like we have a Patreon. To join our Patreon, patreon.com/multiverse newscast, $4 a month, ad-free. You get access to the lives even after they're over, so that's fun. So yeah, check that out. Multiverse Newscast on Patreon.
We
forgot what I was talking about.
We have some exclusive content over there too. We've done anything from we did a fantasy football talk. We did what else have we talked? Favorite fandoms talk. There was another
Matt
one in
had
there too.
A rant about the
Matt,
Acolyte.
why he was mad about the Acolyte.
Talking about toxic fandom.
We had a constructive conversation about it.
We did.
Nope, I was being toxic as hell. I hated that.
My only mission was to spew
I was
toxicity.
just mad because it had women in it, you know?
Damn
No,
females.
Hey, why they got a bunch of women in my Star Wars? No, that wasn't even as good. Hey, I'm trying to make Star Wars here. Come on. Why are these ladies?
Skywalker, not Leia.
Why are they putting all these? Why are these broads in my Star Wars?
You gotta get Jay. You gotta get deeper with your Oz. Your Oz.
I know. I gotta workshop it.
It's more just like he's like a
It's
generic
guttural.
New Yorker gangster.
I'm starting to like
like a
get a little
Texan.
Appalachian with it too. I'm really trying to pull him to New York, but I just can't get there.
This is Oz from the Holla.
I'm gonna workshop it. I'll be back and it'll be better.
That's from the holler is so funny.
It's like a moonshine empire.
We move moonshine. Yeah.
yes,
The
bootlegger
drops
Oz.
you're putting in your eyes are actually moonshine, which would like blind you. Hey. All right.
Well, our Spotify poll this week was: do you think Deadpool 3 deserves an Oscar? And 42% of you said yes. 58% of you said no. Kind of on a line. I felt like one thing we didn't say last week enough. Hugh Jackman was awesome in Deadpool and Wolverine.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And we talked a lot about why we didn't think it would get it, but I don't think we highlighted enough. Like, I do think Hugh Jackman's performance might be Oscar level, but like, it's just in such a weird place that like I don't think it'll. I didn't mean to take anything away from Hugh Jackman's performance. He's really, really freaking good in it. I saw it on some YouTube video today. Oh yeah, it was Honest Trailers did their Deadpool and Wolverine. I think it dropped today or yesterday. And
Yesterday.
Yeah. And they showed just a smattering of his performance and him like crying and talking. I was like, yeah, that's a really good performance. Like if you just take those serious moments of Wolverine, they're really good.
But was it better than Logan?
Yeah, definitely not better than Logan. I mean, I think it's probably on par performance wise, but like it's just surrounded by silliness and it's hard to.
Yeah, it's hard because it's such a different performance.
Yeah. It's not the same goals. And the thing that I think it was Honest Trailers said something like, "You really brought it, but did you have to do that?"
Did you have to?
That's good stuff. All right, but also we had some comments on our Spotify about this question. Fresh gloves, which I don't know. That's
Why is that funny? Like that got me too. Why is that funny?
It's really funny. I don't know. Fresh
Maybe they work in the
gloves.
medical field.
Yeah.
We'll go with that.
Let's hope it's medical. I don't know. says Ryan Reynolds bitterly plays the same character most of the time. The film can easily win with other categories. Hugh could get a nomination. Is it a win? I don't think so. So many heavy hitters this year. We will see.
So we found Haley's shadow account.
I did not, but I did cackle when I read that, and I was like, see, I'm not the only one in the universe.
Definitely not.
Haley Fresh Gloves Hobbs over there.
While we've got her on the spot, I am curious about Fresh Gloves talking about these heavy hitters. I'm curious because it's getting to be that time of the year where I'm starting to think about what is my, Oscar hopeful list going to look like. And I'm actually struggling a little bit. I find myself like banking on like films I have yet to see.
That's kind of where I'm at too.
Interesting. Sunny Tetris says, I really love Jackman's performance. His eyes tell so much that they didn't even need to show in flashbacks. His long rant in the car before the fight alone is what I would highlight. That and him switching tones to comedy when carrying Dogpool. Dogpool is all you need to switch tones.
Dogpool needs an Oscar.
Dogpool does need, they should do an Oscar for dog performances, animal performances.
Airbud, Homeward Bound.
There's
what was
so
one
many
from
Oscar
last year?
Worthy things.
From Anatomy of a Fall.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Snoops.
Yeah.
So
he
cute.
totally did it.
But Airbud actually played Airbud played basketball, so I think he's kind of the front
Where's the
runner.
Airbud Quidditch movie? Where's that?
Oh my gosh, that would be so good. Oh, that would do so well.
Oh man, this is a rabbit hole I'm not going to be able to come out of. We just got to move on. You got to get me out of here.
There's not many rules to Quidditch, and there's definitely not one that a dog can't play. There's really just two rules: catch the golden snitch, and the dog can play. Sherman Smith via YouTube says, considering some of the performances that have been nominated, a Jackman nomination wouldn't be ridiculous. It's about time that the Oscars stop being so pretentious.
Well, I got bad news for you about Hollywood. It's always been pretentious.
I think, I don't know. I feel like there's something about being the outside property. Like for a long time, Westerns weren't that respected. Then they became respectable, but then they sort of faded into obscurity. Not as obscurity, but like they stopped being the big heavy hitters that they were. And it's sort of superhero movies. I feel like they want acceptance into that club, but like, will that really lead to success, or will that be like now they're all too self-serious and they're not going to be the thing that people go to watch and eat popcorn?
It's not entirely unheard of for comic book movies to get wins or even nominations, but again, I'm not trying to dog
Black
on
Panther,
the film.
I mean,
2019 Joker, Joaquin won it for that. And I'm not trying to dog on the film, but just like realistically, like thinking about Deadpool and Wolverine, as much as I loved it, like I even like the fact that Hugh Jackman's being nominated as supporting actor. I'm like, who would you even nominate as lead actor? Like I think all of the characters in that movie are supporting characters in a way. Like that's just the nature of the movie. Yeah. Dogpool. There we go. Yeah.
TJ Stafford in the chat says golden retriever retrieving the golden snitch is perfect. Yep. It's good to say that. Okay, let's move on to our lightning round, and we're going to make it a lightning round, people, because we really, really chewed on those first few stories tonight. So you know how this works. If you've listened to the show before, I'm going to read a story, and then one of us is going to claim it by yelling out our name as a buzzer. And then once we get it, we're going to comment on the story. And if you want to, you get one rebuttal per lightning round. So here we go. The latest buzz from the rumor mill via the production list. Blue Beetle and Cobra Kai star Jolo Maridueña appears to be attached to Marvel Studios' Nova series. While it's still far from official casting, if true, the move could have implications for the future of Jaime Reyes' as of yet unclear future in James Gunn's DCU.
Jay, the production list is a site that lists out movies that are currently sort of starting to get into production or yet to be in production. And somebody put this on there, right? I mean, so it's one of those things you can't take it as official unless it comes out from a major trade. These things can also always change until someone signs a deal. That's when it's official. So you always have to say that to make sure that you understand that it's not a confirmation. But I thought it was a fun rumor to talk about. I mean, I think Jolo Maridueña, he fits this sort of project like Nova, and being maybe Sam Alexander or a character like that in Nova makes a ton of sense. And Blue Beetle, who knows what's happening with that? I mean, James Gunn has said, hey, this guy might pop up again. It's probably played by the same guy, but it was never really clear on if it was like DCU or DC Studios or whatever and what we got going on there. And who knows how much, if any, clarity we'll ever get on that. So if it ends up being true, good for him. I think it's a perfect fit, and he makes a lot of sense in that role. So fun rumor, at least, if nothing else.
Spyglass has set the release date for Scream 7 as February 27th, 2026, with Neve Campbell officially reprising her role and franchise creator Kevin Williamson returning as director.
Scotty, I'll start with the release date. I think that's a pretty good release date for this film. I think it's in keeping with the last couple of movies that came out, and it's typically a time of year where there's not as much competition. So I think that's a nice... Scream really could carve out that time if they're not going to drop near Halloween or something like that. Early spring could be their corner. But apart from that, I'm just kind of ready to stop talking about this one and just see it because there's so much baggage attached to Scream right now. But I'm still on board. I'm still open to checking out the movie and avoiding the discourse around everything else and just evaluate the movie for what it is when it comes out. So.
Paramount is developing a live-action /CG Rugrats film directed by Jason Moore of Pitch Perfect, with a script by SNL's Mikey Day and head writer Streeter Seidel.
Scotty, Rugrats was once upon a time my favorite cartoon growing up. I think before the days of SpongeBob, there was definitely a time where young Scotty's favorite show was Rugrats. But that being said, the prospect of computer animated babies terrifies me. I don't want it. Apart from that, I just my relationship with the Pitch Perfect films is kind of funny because I never watched them until I took my mom to see the third film. That's what she wanted to do it was either her birthday or Mother's Day or something like that. So I did that. So I went in and saw the third film first, then saw the first film on streaming, and I've never seen the middle film. But last thing here, head writer Streeter Seidel, I guess they're saying he's the head writer for SNL, which I wasn't aware of. I knew he worked on SNL, but I recognize Streeter Seidel from his College Humor days. That's where I know him from first and foremost. So good for him. I don't know if this project's going to go the distance or be lauded, but good for him.
Tiny, but they have an opportunity if they do it really well to really talk to millennials with this movie. Because to your point,
Sure.
This was such a show when we were little that I didn't even have cable growing up, but I remember watching Rugrats at people's houses, and so it could be a very it could hit that nostalgic bone really good if they do it right, but it does sound weird.
The CGI babies, I'm already please don't.
Maybe the babies are real and the adults are CGI.
No, it should be said that they did try to animate this again. There was a Rugrats revival on Paramount Plus that was animated, and if you're looking at it and thinking, is that true? It's because no one watched
exactly
it. It did not get any traction, but the revival was attempted in an animated form, and it was not successful. So, hey,
Was that the one where the babies were adults?
Babies.
All Grown Up was a different thing that came out
that was a different thing.
2000-ish, yeah.
Okay, because I knew about that sequel series, but I didn't know about the reboot, I guess. All right, It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia star and creator Rob McElhenney has confirmed that the show will be shooting a crossover episode with the cast of Abbott Elementary, which also takes place in Philadelphia.
Jay, I thought this was really interesting and fun. It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia and Abbott Elementary are both really big shows, and they're really hugely popular in Philadelphia. You've got Philadelphia natives popping into these shows. Abbott Elementary had Jalen Hurts, the quarterback for the Philadelphia Eagles, for example, guest star in an episode. So some of these Philadelphia people are showing up, and it seems to be that like a show that's very popular in that city. So I think pairing these two together is really cool. It's kind of a win for the city, I guess, on some level, but also too, it's just to see two totally different shows. The characters from one pop up in another. I just think that's fun, and the idea of a one-off episode is fun. It's not a whole season. It's not a movie. It's just popping in for fun, for gags, and then we're going our separate ways.
That is a lot of fun. James Hawes, an established TV creator who most recently directed a string of episodes of the Gary Oldman spy series Slow Horses, has been tapped to helm the first 2 episodes of Lanterns for Max.
Who's seen Slow Horses?
My husband has.
Call him, get him down here.
I hear good things.
He literally just left. He really liked it, and so knowing what we know about Lanterns, that it's supposed to be like a police not procedural, but like a police show, a buddy cop, but probably darker show. I guess that makes sense.
Cool. According to the Hollywood Reporter, Katie O'Brien, the rising star who gained notice with Love Lies Bleeding, is joining Glenn Powell in The Running Man, Paramount's adaptation of the Stephen King novel.
Haley? You mean Katie O'Brien, who gained notice in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.? Just kidding. I always call back to when she was on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. because I think it's such a random pull. She was also in The Mandalorian, and she was with Glenn Powell in Twisters. She had kind of a tiny role.
Yeah, I forgot about that.
So maybe they're going to be, movie pals. I love Katie. I think she's great.
Yeah. Neat. Will Smith is set to reunite with director Michael Bay for the first time in 30 years for a new Netflix action movie titled Fast and Loose. The film follows a man who wakes up in Mexico with no memory and discovers he has been living a double life as both a CIA agent and a crime lord.
Jay, the Will Smith resurgence into Hollywood is stuff that you could write a book about, from The Slap to Bad Boys to just like seeing the box office come back around Will Smith and then now teaming up with Michael Bay again. I just think it's really interesting. Like, I think it's something that people who maybe find themselves in a similar position where they're embroiled in some controversy and they're an actor and they're A-list or whatever, and then all of a sudden people don't know how to receive them in Hollywood. I think you could learn a lot here about how to deal with that type of crisis, because Will Smith seemed, after the Oscars debacle and all the weirdness that came after, we were sort of talking like, man, we might not see Will Smith again in a movie. And now it's Bad Boys. You got this I Am Legend movie coming down the highway. You've got teaming up with Michael Bay. I mean, he's back, and I just think it's a really interesting story that we saw unfold with the career of Will Smith.
Yeah. Netflix has canceled the Jeff Goldblum-led series Chaos after 1 season. Matt.
Scotty.
Okay, go for it.
Chaos, you say. I was involved with another series that involved chaos theory, and that panned out a little bit better for me, but c'est la vie.
How did we get Jeff Goldblum on the podcast?
He had a hole in his schedule, and we said if you can make it, and he decided to just pop in. It's really kind of him.
We got him on speed dial, but he and I can never appear on the cast together. That's the one rule.
Right. Except you just did.
It's in his contract. Mm-hmm. Just like me and the Penguin, we can't appear together.
Yeah, exactly. Perfect doubles for each other. I just wanted to say I loved this show, and I'm really, really bummed that it's getting 1 season. Netflix is kind of notorious for putting out pretty good shows and then canceling them after 1 season. But I really thought this one would go, having Jeff Goldblum and how much they pushed it. I don't know why it wouldn't get a better reception. I think if you finish the first episode, you will want to finish the whole thing. Like, I think it's really, really, really good. I was kind of like not hooked until the end of the first episode, and then I was like completely hooked, and finished it in a couple days. I loved it. I very rarely binge things like that, so it was really wonderful. Prey star Amber Midthunder has joined the second season of Apple TV Plus's Monsterverse series Monarch: Legacy of Monsters.
Scotty, I still need to catch up on Monarch: Legacy of Monsters, but I really like Amber Midthunder. The first thing I recall seeing her in was Legion on FX, and she was a standout on that, so was really happy for her when Prey was the hit that it was, and I think she's an excellent performer, so the sky's the limit for her.
The Mindy Kaling-led animated Scooby-Doo spinoff Velma has been canceled by Max after 2 seasons.
Scotty. I checked out a couple of episodes just because I was pretty much pressured by someone I was hanging out with at the time, and it's bad. I don't know how it got 2 seasons. Like, how is that possible? Even if they were like got 2 seasons greenlit, like at some point in the production, somebody should have just said this is not good. Like it is aggressively bad. So.
It's got a Halloween special coming out too, I think.
Oh,
this month. So that will be the last. Like, it's not even done yet. It's still got a Halloween special. But yeah, this was like, people hated this from the start. Like, pretty much across the board. We were like, this is the one. So bad. So like you said, I'm surprised it got a second season.
Same. I never saw it, so I can't really comment on how good it was, but I just heard nothing but bad things. Insider Jeff Schneider is adding another name to the list of...
Schneider.
Insider Jeff Snyder is adding another name to the list of potential actors to play Jon Stewart in the upcoming DC series Lanterns, reporting that 21 Bridges actor Stephen James has emerged as the frontrunner.
Jay, this is just the way every DC casting is going to be now. I'm going to have to sit here and hear like 5 names and then finally get the real name at the end, and it's going to be somebody that wasn't mentioned in the first 5. So I guess that's just what's going to happen every single week. We're going to get about 15 more names about Lanterns before we finally land on somebody. But, Jeff Snyder, he's pretty plugged in. I mean, if he says that this guy's at least in the running, he used the term front runner. We saw the Hollywood Reporter mention a couple other guys last week that we talked about. But, I mean, I believe that he's at least being thrown around in conversation. So just put me out of my misery and please tell me who's going to play this character so we can stop talking about it. I'm tired of it.
Yeah. Christopher Nolan's next film with Universal now has a release date of July 17th, 2026, with Matt Damon in early talks to star.
Jay, we know nothing about Christopher Nolan's next film. We know nothing about the plot. We do know that he made his high-profile move away from Warner Brothers to Universal, and then Oppenheimer, and we know the story with that and what that's done for Nolan. So the Nolan hype is real. I took this opportunity so I could tie this all the way back and make this thing a full circle. There was a mention around Joker 2 about Nolan that apparently the ending of the first Joker movie, and this was in that Hollywood Reporter article, the ending was going to be that the Joker was going to carve his face in front of all of his supporters, that he was going to pull out the knife and do the "you want to know how I got these scars" thing, and he was going to cut his face, but they had to ask Nolan because of what he did with The Dark Knight and Heath Ledger's character, and he rejected that. So he said no. And then when they asked him about a sequel, since he had moved to Universal, he just, he didn't have any input on that. So maybe you needed a little bit of Nolan input on Joker Folie too. Maybe it would have been nice to have him in the room.
For sure. All right, well, that's our news for tonight, guys. Thank you for joining us, and we're gonna wrap it there. Let's go around and tell the people what else you're doing online this week. Haley Hobbs.
We are continuing our Secret Wars complete coverage over on Source Pages, and this week's episode is a little late due to some scheduling conflicts, but we'll be announcing the winner of our review contest for the Marvel What If book, What If Wanda Maximoff and Peter Parker Were Siblings. So thank you to everybody who wrote reviews for us. We really appreciate it.
Awesome. My niece started reading that book today. She's very excited. She's really enjoying it.
Good.
And Jay Sisson.
Yeah, you can find me at Commute the Podcast weekly. We did not have a new episode this week, but we will next week. And then always watching the coverage of the Penguin. I was not on this week's episode, but I know Matt and Scotty, you guys were, and Zuhair, and we're continuing that. So every week, a few of us or all of us or whoever will be continuing the conversation around the Penguin. So go check out that episode if you're watching the Penguin. If you're thinking about starting it, it's only 3 episodes in. So go back, catch up on Always Watching.
Say penguin.
Penguin? I can't find it.
You said it earlier, and I was like,
my
"Are
wife
you the
makes
Benedict Cumberbatch of the holler?"
My wife makes
Benedict
fun of me
Res
for
the
it.
Holler.
Like we had the same conversation like 4 hours ago about saying it, and I can't not say it any other way. Like it just feels totally unnatural, and I stopped fighting it. And if I'm doing a podcast on it, I can't catch myself too much, so I just have to own it. And it's Penguin with the A, and that's just how we're going to have to roll from here on out.
Penguin.
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 Penguin. I love it. Okay. And J. Scotty St. Clair.
Yeah, as I mentioned over on Bingers Assemble, there is coverage for both the 2019 Joker film as well as Folie, Deux, so go check that out. And on Animation Deliberation, we did have the opportunity to discuss the much beloved Wild Robot. So go check that out, bring tissues, and yeah.
Hey, if you want to know why this week's intro was so weird, you can go join the Patreon and catch the live view of that. Our Patreon, patreon.com/multiverse newscast. We mentioned it earlier, but we'll mention it again at the end here. You get it $4 a month, ad free, and you get the live shows in replay or whatnot. So hope you guys will do that, and check us out on Always Watching, as I mentioned, and Marvel Cinematic Universe podcast, and Star Trek Universe podcast is starting back up soon. At least it's been going, but I'm not on the other episodes. But I'm about to hop back on there for Lower Decks starting in a couple weeks. So check out all the things. StrandedPanda.com has most of these shows, and we'll be back with lots more next week on Multiverse News. Peace.
You stay classy, Multiverse.
Hey, thanks for listening to Multiverse News, or watching it, or whatever you're doing, eyeballs or ear holes, whichever thing. We do this show every week, and we appreciate you listening. StrandedPanda.com is where you can find all of our podcasts, and thank you for listening. Check us out wherever you get podcasts. Hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, hit the little bell icon, whatever you have on whatever service you're doing. Rate us, like us. We're really thirsty. That's what I'm saying.